And welcome to another episode on Oak and Rock Fatherhood. But obviously, you can tell this is the biggest and most attended Oak and Rock Fatherhood panel we've had to date. That is correct. We have 10 men on, every single one of them coming out of the fraternity of excellence, every single one of them having put in the reps to improve their family, every single one of them having brought in connection and the prioritization of peace with their children over the instant gratification that comes with the slap, the spank, and the yell. These men have taken the long path to do the right thing. We've got 10 men on here. We're going to be bouncing around to each of them to share their story, what they've experienced. Most importantly, we've created an environment where we've normalized the discussion on parenting, removing the taboo, removing the stigma associated with talking about being a good dad. On this panel, we can say, hey, how are you doing as a father? And it's normal. It's expected. It's promoted. That's what these men do every single day inside FoE, weekly led by Anthony. This actually is the brainchild of Anthony, so I'm going to throw it his way. Anthony, brother, it happened, man. We made it happen.
Yes, sir. No, this is cool, man. I'm excited that it's happening. I'm glad to see these men on here. This is something, like I was saying earlier, man. I've been thinking about this for over a year, right? To show what we've been doing behind the scenes. And these are men we talk to every week. We have these meetings and we talk about how we can become better fathers. So I'm excited. I can't wait to hear the stories, how lives have changed, how our kids are in an environment that is much better than it was, from a few years ago. So we're gonna hear from each man here tonight and hear what they have to say. The topic, what we want to discuss is how we've changed our home, whether that's removing aggression, physical violence, manipulation, and what's come from that, right? What we see now, what we see in our kids, the changes, and the relationships that we've built with them, and really how that feels now, right? I want to get to the meat of it and what these men are experiencing, what they're feeling. I want them to share the wins, so other men, other fathers can see that this is real, right? This peaceful parenting, positive parenting, whatever you want to call it, it's really having an effect in the home. So we're going to kick it off. We're going to go to Charles. We want to hear your story, brother. You're first. Let us know what good things have been happening in your home.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. Really appreciate the invite. Most of you guys know me and know a little bit about my backstory as becoming a father. But I'm just going to get right into the wins for me with him. He's 16 years old. I kind of got into his life when he was 3. I had no idea what I was doing when I first became a dad. Like a lot of men have expressed to me, regardless if it's a biological father or not. Everyone says that, oh, you're not really ready to be a dad. You just are, right? You're not really, just kind of happens. A little baby shows up, right? And you're like, oh shit, now I'm responsible for this creature, So I was kind of lost for a while, but just to start off, I never was violent with him. I never struck him, spanked him, or hit him in any way. I will admit that I did lose my temper sometimes because I wasn't used to being around children. And that was my biggest, hurdle to overcome. And I kind of realized that he matters. And by realizing that he's going to grow up one day and look at me and remember this man that was in his life, I don't want him to remember me as being a violent person, reacting poorly to any situation that may come up. So I really focused on how I responded to, him spilling a glass of milk or making too much noise and annoying me when I was tired and shit like that. And I just really just focused on him mattering in my life. And by being that way, it exposed a lot of things I needed to work on as a man. I needed to work on myself and realize that I had demons in the closet that I wasn't, addressing as a man and improving on things that were my weaknesses. So as I worked on myself, I realized how important it was to realize how important his life is to me and matters. So I had to be more like taking a deep breath, not reacting right away, and kind of just listening to what's happening and then responding accordingly, without just saying, shut up and go downstairs, or go to your room, or, you know what I mean? Just like, why would I want to shut him out of my life like that? Because he's running or screaming or yelling or having fun, and I'm tired from work or hungover at the time, back when I used to drink and stuff. And I don't know. It opened up now that he's older, and when I started doing that with him and actually spending the time and listening and talking to him and really listening to him, it really grew our relationship, because he's like my best friend now. He talks to me. He asks me stuff that he won't even ask his mom. Like, you guys are going to laugh at this. He said to me the other night, he's like, Dad, do you shave? And I'm like, yeah, so do you. He's like, no, down there. And dude, I was laughing, and I think it's kind of cool that he came to me with that, because I don't know, it was just kind of cool. But that's just an example of the kind of relationship we have. We're really tight. We spend a lot of time together on the weekends. He smiles a lot when he's around me. There's no violence with him. There's no verbal violence. There's definitely no physical violence. He's never had a hand put on him in a negative way. But I did have to work on when I was first a dad, to work on that verbal abuse that came out every once in a while, whether it was at his mom or him. Is something that I had to work on. I'm not proud of it, but I worked on it and fixed it. And our whole entire family benefited from that in a positive way.
Yeah.
That's the most important part, Charles. When we look at this and we look at what's going on with men now who are trying to find their way, some of them think, well, I don't hit him, so I'm not spanking. But they're still using those verbal, like really domineering, real manipulation tactics. But I did have to ask. Actually, first, I want to give a shout out to Mark Fitzpatrick. Gives in the chat, how's that for a panel of exceptional fathers? Shout out to Mark. He's an exceptional father himself. It's absolutely crushing it day in and day out, brother. Appreciate you tuning in. Love it. Charles, my question for you. Did you come from in a background that was just a peaceful environment the entire time? Or did you have to unwork where you came from? And you don't have to go too deep into it, but I know. But I want to make sure people understand that you didn't come from sunshine and rainbows and you carry that onto your kid. You did the work on yourself. And it's, that meme where Spider-Man's holding back the bus so it doesn't hit the kid. A lot of fathers, they have to stop everything in their life from being brought on to the next generation. So where did you come from, and how did you what made you make that choice that, I'm not going to react to him. I'm going to respond like a man?
My father never hit me. He was a little verbal abusive. He came from he had me late in life. He was 53 when he had me. I mean, I tell the story to a lot of guys that know it, a lot of men that know it. My father was born in 1916 and lived through the Great Depression. So, he had a 5th grade education and didn't really, read books, and he was just set in his ways. But he didn't hit me, but he would verbally abuse when he had the chance to, I could say. But so hitting my son was never even a thought. But as far as the verbal abuse came, that was something that I just, I knew it had to be addressed. I didn't know how to address it. I don't know how it relates to my past or how I grew up. I didn't grow up with rainbows in my life, like you said, and cotton balls to cushion my fall. But it really came from just, I knew there was something going on. I knew that it was wrong. And I just thought that, hey, man, I guess this is how you do it. You yell at your kids, go to your room, clean your room, or if you don't clean your room, I'm taking your Xbox away. And then when I started talking to Anthony, and I used to stop by his place of business quite often, believe it or not, and we had some really, really good conversations. And
That was almost 7 years ago now, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
this isn't a quick process by any means. Right?
no,
This is the grind.
It's-
This takes time. You got to be dedicated. You really got to change. You got to own your mistakes, like you were saying, Charlie.
yeah. And yeah, hey, listen, man, my whole family benefited from it for sure. We're definitely a tighter unit, definitely a happier environment. And one benefit that came from it was we're able to handle other stresses, outside stresses, COVID, whether it's a financial burden, a death in the family. My family's stronger now. Recently, we just had a death in the family, and my family can handle it. They do go to me. I don't want to say, I hate to use that word patriarch, but I'm more of like a leader. They know it. When they're around me, they're safe. They know they're safe. And that's what I really got out of it, and my family got out of it.
That's great to hear, man. It really is. That's why we do what we're doing, and that's why we have you men on here. Jared, you're up next. Let's hear what you got to say, bro.
My story kind of starts sort of the reverse of what Charlie was saying. It kind of starts with my dad. My dad wasn't a really great father, wasn't terribly involved in our lives. And he was very impatient as a man. And he frequently let his emotions run away with him when he was with us as a family. And we were all fairly terrified of him. I mean, he was 6'4", 300 pounds, and just a big, and that's not 300 pounds of fat. He was a big freaking dude with a big, huge, loud voice. And all my friends were terrified of him too. They never wanted to come over to my house because he was this scary dude. So when I had kids, I knew that was not what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be like that. And I tried and succeeded a lot of times, but also I didn't even realize I was doing it until much later. But I always would use my physical presence and my voice. Again, I'm also 6'4". I weigh about 200 pounds.
What's that like, man?
Listen,
For those
Zach,
who have never
you'll
been
never
that
know,
high.
so don't worry about it. It's
All right, as you were.
But because of that, and my voice, again, it's got a presence to it, and it's not trying to brag. It's just that's physical facts. I'm loud and I'm big, and I would intimidate my kids into obedience. I would try to force compliance with me by being the big, mean, intimidating presence, the heavy, in the house. And it didn't yield good results. When my oldest son, when he turned 16, had gotten in a couple of car accidents and also got a speeding ticket. And he had this whole event planned out where he called us into the living room one at a time, me and my wife, and calmly explained, I know I've screwed up and I did all, and basically it suddenly dawned on me. He was doing this whole presentation that he had rehearsed and practiced because he was terrified of how I was going to react to this bad thing that had happened. And I felt horrible. I couldn't believe that this was something that was going on to me, with me at that moment. And that was when I finally realized that I kind of was my dad. The light version of my dad, the slightly more easygoing version of my dad. And it broke my heart to finally realize that. I mean, I had a good relationship with my kids. We did have fun. I was involved in their lives, but I hadn't realized that I was doing that intimidation thing, that violence. And I would yell at them as well. I lost my temper occasionally. I don't think I ever spanked my kids, not that I can remember, but I definitely would like grab their arm and squeeze really hard and part of that was because I also was just terrified of losing control completely, because I knew that if I started to do some physical abuse that I may not have been able to stop. I may not have been able to control that power, and to those smaller children, I could really do some damage, and I knew that. So it was always something I avoided, but I could feel it in me, as ready to burst out. And finally, my son is now a grown man, and he's 18, and I ran into this group of fathers, and I discovered a new way of parenting, where I was no longer parenting. I was relationshiping with my kids. I wanted now to have the relationship that I didn't build before. I was active in their lives. I was present in their lives, but I wasn't building relationships. I was busy trying to control their behavior. I was busy trying to get them to be something that I wanted them to be, rather than allowing them to be what they wanted to be, to do what they wanted to do. And to make a more complex story much shorter, I have seen a lot of changes in the way that I relate to my kids since changing that behavior only a few years ago. 2 years ago or so is when this all started. And I've had the opportunity to see dramatic changes in how my daughter relates to me and how my son relates to me. I have two sons and I have a daughter. I have an older son who's now married and a younger son who's 17 and a daughter that's 15, soon to be 16. And that shift in my attitude from not just parenting, but relationshiping with my kids it's changed my life. And it's really opened my eyes to how I should have been for a really long time, and just didn't know how. I didn't know that was even a possibility. That had never occurred to me before, because that wasn't how I was raised. It wasn't what I saw. And now that I know a different path, I'm hoping that I can influence my kids more so that they see that path working for them in their future.
That meat right there, that little moment right there where you had to collect it, because you can now see that connection with the kids. That is what I want parents to see here. That is why I wanted to do this, because you were blind before and you didn't even know it. But now you can see it, and it is a beautiful thing. It is an incredibly beautiful thing when you see it blossoming before your eyes, and before you didn't even have an opportunity to. You couldn't. It's like, the goggles are blacked out. You were moving, you could feel it, you can control it, you could touch the environment, but you couldn't see that. And then when that comes off, man, dude, you are now like the mountain king, climbing around with your kids. You're running around making all these things. We get to see it in FoE, and we're spoiled because of that, because we get all this behind the scenes stuff, and these people get you for an hour. Jared, when I see that through you, and obviously when you speak about it, we can hear the passion, but you can see it in those kids' faces. It is incredible. It's like being on top of the mountain. You got that view, especially, the token photo, like the Appalachian Trail, where it's like the sea of green on that edge. It's like the iconic photo. That's the iconic family photo of seeing a man with kids who are happy to be with them. Charles said it as well. He smiles when he's with me. That, I hope that wasn't lost on anybody. Your kids are happy to be with you. They're not forced. They're not hanging their heads. They're not looking at their phones. They're like, I'm with my dad. I love that, man. Like, what a beautiful thing that is. And I'm glad you said it, because that tied in so well with Charles. Like, it literally is like you can just see a whole new freaking world when you take that big boulder out of the way. You take those black goggles off. A lot of the dark clouds inside homes right now, they're put there by the people in the home. They can be cleared out by the people in the home. It's just a choice.
Yeah. As the best expression of that, of what's gone on, my daughter, we're planning to send her on a humanitarian trip to Africa. She's going to be gone for a couple of weeks, 22 days on this trip. And when we planned it, we asked her, so who do you want to go with you? Do you want me to go with you, or do you want your mom to go with you? I get to go with her.
You're just pulling out our heartstrings now, man. Now you're just like,
I get to go. Yeah, it was that was actually 100% that was a shock to me. That was really a surprise because our relationship was not the best for quite a while. And for her to make that choice was just a little bit of proof to me that what I've been doing is paying dividends, and it's been worth it. As hard as it was to make that shift, and as hard as it was to reach a point where I realized I needed to make that shift, those efforts now are paying off, and I can even do things like we were talking on FoE on the Fatherhood channel once, and I was bringing up my son Gavin. And I was sharing some of the experiences that I've had with him, with his anxiety and some of the stuff. And afterwards, my son came, and I said that, by the way, knowing that my son could hear me. I had this whole conversation knowing that my son was hearing what I was saying. And he came up to me and said, "So were you talking about me?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was." "What were you saying?" "I was saying that you're a good kid, that you've had some problems, but that we've learned how to deal with those problems, and that you and I have a good relationship so we can talk about these kind of things." And he's like, "You're right." And he's totally comfortable with me talking about some sensitive things with his life because he knows that he can trust me, that I'm not going to throw him under the bus, that I'm not going to like say wrong things or mean things or digs at him. I talk about him in an honest way, which he appreciates. And my daughter too. We've had some experiences with that recently too, where she knows she can trust me that I'm not going to put her in harm's way, that I'm not going to say things that are hurtful to her or my son. And that's also been very, very cool to see that I can be even more honest and even more direct with them in very unusual ways. And it's really cool.
Well, like
Jared, you had
Jared,
said, good.
You worked on the relationship, right? That's you got out of the role of being a dad or what you thought a dad was supposed to be, and you worked on the relationship. And I think that's something a lot of fathers miss. We tend to think our kids are misbehaved, they're not listening to us, but the way that you get your kids to listen is by connecting with them, building that trust, building the relationship, and that's just something so many dads miss way too often. So I'm glad you shared that.
Jared, you had said you used the voice. That was your form of control. And, you wouldn't be able to harness that. And Building Better Fathers, he's one of the Dad Twitter gents. Solid man. I'm hoping to get him on the Dad Twitter panel. We'll be running similar to this. But he said, I tweeted today asking people for phrases their dads used. A lot of what their dads said were used to downplay emotions of weakness. I'll give you something to cry about. Walk it off. People lose the fact that these words carry weight as well. These words matter. The tone you use matters. We were talking to Charles about that. The language in the home, the demeanor that you carry. It's not just a physical hand. And people think, well, I didn't spank him. You can leave scars that people can't see. They're invisible wounds. So it's not just about the spank. It's about everything. It's about who you are as a man. And, to pass that to Marcel. Marcel has been on Oak and Rock. Marcel is a repeat guest, and he's coming back. And not once has this man spoken, and I've not walked away better off because of it. Just a wealth of knowledge. We saw your notes. So remember, there is somewhat of a time limit here. So when you go through your Britannica encyclopedia of all the things you've been crushing as a dad, we got to do
this is my
footnotes.
kids. It's not all the kids. It's not all positive. There's some stuff in there they threw in there that they want more of.
Floor is yours, brother.
So I'll give a little bit of background. I hesitate to make it sound like it's an excuse or a way to sort of forgive the dad that I was before I made some significant changes, but I would frame it in that I didn't really know. I didn't know of another path. And what I mean by that is just short backstory. I have about 10 years where I was taking about 120 flights a year. Corporate environment, a lot of just, grenades being thrown at me by email, a lot of fires to put out. It's just, a barrage. And at some point you get used to that and you kind of fall into this, everything has a quick fix and it, you're solving for things the way you think you need to apply the change. So that's on one side. And then out of it came, married, this strong, beautiful woman that I fell in love with. And in 4 years, we had 4 kids. And so I have now a 10-year-old boy, an 8-year-old girl. And then I've got 2 5-year-old twins, boy, girl. And in hindsight, there's 2 things when I was thinking about this that it's not that I guess I forgive the previous dad, the previous me, because I did for a very short period, So my oldest, I did spank him. It was never vicious. I think I always had some sort of boundary in my head where I knew that I wasn't doing it for what I thought was my benefit. I thought it was helping him. But I will say that, how did I arrive to doing that? I arrived at doing that because I thought everything in my life was either a yes or a no, a one way or another way, helicopter parenting or staunch discipline. And so I picked that path. I thought that's what I should be doing. And so in the throes of 4 kids, we have a lot of things going on, fires to put out. The thing that I think men do a lot, at least maybe in our environment, is, and whether or not we admit it, we think, I'm not going to be a victim, so I'm going to assert myself and I'm going to project the fix in 2 seconds on my children. And I knew the second that I slapped, his rear or whatever, anytime that I had that viciousness with him, I knew it was wrong. And I think that was part of, it was probably a period of time there where there's a lot of change I wanted in my life. I wasn't as much in shape. I wasn't, probably enjoying too many cocktails at a bar at a missed flight. But I never really thought anything of it. I just thought that's really the path everybody takes. It is what it is, right? Like, is it not tragic that, like, think of how unusual this is right now. We're all these men talking about how we've changed and learning from each other. And that's exactly where I was. I had everyone in my life that I love, probably none of which are going to be my best friend. I probably am going to, hurt or damage them. And I see small little bits of that with my oldest. And then I just got around other men and we traded some notes on really another path, a path in the middle, right? Which is to speak to their level. And I think there's a lot to be said for what came out of that. I mean, where I stand now, I could easily say, measure myself against the guy that was doing that. I would never probably say that all the choices in my life were, I want to be around my kids. I want to figure out a better home for them. They're my best friends. I want to go for a walk. I mean, these are more of a burden, probably because I didn't understand them and I didn't know what to do with them. And all I knew was, like every other email or flight that I'm missing, is I got to fix the problem. And I would, kind of bring that negative energy into my child. And I remember the look on his face. I mean, the kid, is pale in the face. He would stare at me with his chaotic eyes, like fire in his eyes, not mad, just like unknown where this is coming from. And, since then I've come up with, I've been on it's just immersion. I've been around really good men. And sometimes it applies to my situation. Sometimes it doesn't. But I'll be honest with you. I made one big decision, which was, this is not about me. Who cares about what my needs are? And that's how I think every one of my peers, all the guys that I know, they still view it as, I was wronged, or how dare you raise your voice at me, son, or how dare you step up to me. They treat this poor young child, and then they give them the penalties that we would apply to the best friends that we have at a bar, right? You dishonor me, son, I'm going to spank you. And that's all I knew. And so I will throw out that since then I've made amends for it. I've had direct conversations with my son, telling him that I'm just, hey, I didn't know. And like a lot of things, there's times where, growing from that, I've given them gifts back, which is I've given them their body back, right? I've made it something in my family that everyone understands. There is no viciousness. There's no physical aggression, touching. Nobody. That's something for us to say. For you to be able to tell your child, I can promise you that as long as I live, I will never let someone lay their hands on you, and nor should anyone ever. And if you're ever with someone for the rest of your life, you make sure that's true. But I didn't know that. I didn't know what could come of that. I just simply thought it was you're a helicopter parent, or on the other side, you spank your kids, and I'm a traditional Catholic. And again, people throw out a lot of these outs, right? They'll throw out these outs of whether it is their belief system or what it really is. I was lazy. I was lazy because I knew I could have put in the time. I know I could have read the books. I could have surrounded myself with better people. And I guess I just made that choice. And I'll submit the one thing I'll throw out, listening to some other great dads on this call, I got lucky. I mean, that's the bottom line. I changed my behavior at the right time when I still didn't permanently damage or have regret that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. I still have some regret about my oldest, but I'm honest to him. And I think our friendship is greater because he saw weakness in his dad. And so in a sense, I think he's got some leadership in the family that he feels he has a special relationship with me. The other kids don't. Hey, you didn't get best dad. Or you have best dad. You didn't get the previous dad. Right. And so we've turned it into a positive in a way. It's pretty cool. But now, what I'd submit is that I've learned it's not one big fix. It's the sum of so many small things, but there are some anchor principles there, that there should never be aggression. You should never have your children be afraid of you, period. That should go away. And if you're doing that, somewhere in your mind, you don't need me to tell you that. You know it's wrong. And I knew it was wrong. And so, I answered that call in the back of my head that said, what I'm doing is wrong. I don't know what to do next. I'm going to seek out some other guys, or I'm going to just go somewhere. And then I stumbled into these great men. And then, you learn a lot of little things, what they're communicating, how they're doing it, what this means, what that means. I've got a kid that's, high energy. My youngest is making me crazy. I mean, the guy is just a beast. And, but I'm not afraid of him anymore, right? Because it's like I've got this armor. I've got stronger men than me. I've had men that have stories that I can learn from. And then, what I'll just sort of finish it with is the good that I get out of that. I mean, I have my daughter writing me this long list of a lot of things, but the one thing that I'm starting to see from my children is they notice everything, and the compliments that they give are better than the compliments you can ever get from your friends or anyone you work with. When your child wants you to write down on a list, says, hey, Dad, I see that you're giving to even when it's people that are not in the family. And you didn't even notice they caught that, and they understand the principle and the lesson behind that. You know why? Because I left some space in their brain to not be afraid of me and see something else that Dad's working on. And maybe they can then mimic that, so like, and I could go on and on. I've showed you the long list, but there's,
That's good.
it's a happy place that I've landed, man. This is, I feel like I dodged a bullet, and it's thanks to some great men around me.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. I would just say that you weren't lucky, and it has very little to do with us, man. It's all you, right? You chose to take the steps. You chose to improve and become a better man. So you gotta, as much as it's as easy as it is to beat ourselves up, you gotta sometimes pat yourself on the back and know that you're on the right path because you're seeing the results.
I am seeing the results. That's absolutely true. I'll tell you, my daughter crawls in bed every single morning before she goes to school. It takes about 5 minutes in the morning just to lay with her dad, and that wasn't something we had before. It's amazing. I love it.
You think about how many kids have been relegated to, in an age of efficiency and the least amount of work required, we have Keurig instead of pots of coffee. We have Tinder instead of dating. You can tap your phone and food shows up. It's amazing. Kids fall into that as well. Yelling, that's faster than communicating. Go do this. Here's a tablet. Go over there. Well, that's a lot easier than you sitting down and doing work with them and growing with them and connecting with them. So these little things, while it may be harder, the return is much more enjoyable. The satisfaction you get, those compliments you get, the reps you put into it, the process of raising a child is a lifelong commitment. It's in that process you find the benefit of it, the feedback, that loop of like, this is amazing. This is when you hear all these dads saying, well, I love my kids. And you see these dads like, I hate my kids. Well, they don't even see the process. They're not even in the process to enjoy it. They just give them the tablets. They don't get to see any of that. And that's the greatest gift you can give yourself. And like Anthony said, he took the words out of my mouth. We talk about these things. We didn't do any of these steps for you, man. You walked that whole path. We kind of said like, hey, we're heading over there. We think over there's a good spot to go. You're like, all right. You climbed the mountain, the hills, grabbed the rope, put the gear on your back and walked. We didn't do any of that. All the results you see are from the work you did. And a lot of men listening to this, they want what they're hearing the discussion we're having. A lot of homes are filled with conflict. They're like, "I want what you guys have." Dude, nobody gave this to you. Nobody gave this to any of the man on this panel. Every single one of us made a choice and worked in that direction and walked in that direction and kept on going when it got hard. And when they fell down, they turned to their fellow man. Hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, what's up? How many times have all of us sat together privately and had a discussion on fatherhood, spilled our guts and where we're screwing up and where we're doing great? You know, it's a thing that was normalized. So anybody listening to this, I'm talking to you. You have to do the work. You can reach out to these guys at any point, like, hey guys, what's up? Like, what's going on with you guys? How'd you do this? Every single man here would answer. Mr. Finn.
Can I throw one last little thing out there? I think Jared and or Charles might have alluded to it. I will just tell you, there's something in the center of your being that basically, there's something in your center that demands that you're a good father. And when you fix that and you get it sorted, I mean, you can do a lot more. Your life is so much more at ease, and the energy you have to put into your work, your job. Charles said something, if you have any surprises, you lose someone in the family, you get that balance in your soul. Life is a lot easier. Just put it out there. Just button it up. Sorry about that, Finn.
Mr. Finn.
Yeah, that's no worries, man. That's no worries. It's good that you throw that stuff out there. And I want to start off by telling both Zac and Anthony, don't sell yourself short. Nobody here, because you guys are right about, like what Marcel said, you know, he took the steps, he did that. But at the same time, it's so important that men seek out other good men to improve themselves. So we as individuals have that responsibility to take those steps, but you need to try to just find the right people to be around, to bounce ideas off of, to learn from. You know, iron sharpens iron. So I don't want you guys
to. I accept your compliment, Mr. Finn. No problem.
But it's true.
Just to be clear, right? This was never about parenting.
True.
This is about becoming better men.
True. That's true. But to be a good father, it's like a prerequisite. You got to be a good man too. I think that's a start. You know. So I think maybe, I'm not sure, but I may have the youngest children out of the group here. So I'm in this process. I'm in the transition of being that better father. Like most men, I had the example of the comments that were put in the chat there about, you know, you want something to cry about, you know, you living in my house, these are my rules, things like that. So my father was very stern. He wasn't shy to pull off his belt, to smack us on the rear, you know. I remember my brother and I, when we knew we were gonna get in trouble, we would go in the bathroom and wrap toilet paper nice and thick across our palms so it was spread out, and we would pat our pants just to prepare. And when he found out, he would pull the pants down. So growing up like that, you know, my son is 5, my daughter's 3, and when my son, at, you know, about 3 years old, when he started acting up, I would strike his little butt, just because that's what I learned. And it's been a year that I've been amongst you men, and I have implemented a lot of the practices that we talk about, you know, like you, Anthony, peaceful parenting, you know, peaceful fathers. And it works. And just like what Jared had mentioned about working on the relationship, one of the things that I focused on right from the beginning, even when my wife was pregnant with our son, was that I really wanted to be a present father. You know, my parents broke up; they separated when I was quite young. So the largest figure I had in my life, as far as male figure, was my grandfather and stuff, because, you know, old school. And so my dad, he was somewhat around, but not like I believe he should have been, and I wanted to not be that. So I even made a deal with my wife, as when she was pregnant, you know, when our kids get here, I wanted to make sure I wanted to be the one to put them to bed at night. You know, you work all day, so, you know, I come home and I wanted to read to them and be with them. Until today, I still do that, and it's been great. But since being involved, FoE, being in these fatherhood Zooms, and listening to how we talk about this in peaceful parenting, the spanking has gone to practically nothing. Even when I lose my temper, I don't raise my hand to him. I'm still working on the tone of voice and the threats. I'm trying to. I don't want to say. You would say negotiate. The thing is, what I try to do, because my son and my daughter, they're night and day. My daughter, she listens and she she follows the, I'm gonna say the rules, but the way we conduct ourselves in the house. And my son, he's that kind of kid. You say white, he says black. You say go, he says stop. I mean, it's pushback
Yeah.
every
Well, he
time.
doesn't respond to fear the same way.
No, he has no fear. And you know what's interesting about him is that uh, it's funny because our kids, they can be a mirror to us in a way. Because if you see how they behave or how they talk, if you pay attention, it's almost looking at yourself in a way. Um, my son, he'll pull up and sit at a table and open up a book and pull out a pen and Derek, what are you doing? I'm working because I work behind a desk a lot of the time, and he's implementing me. And when he's frustrated, he'll tell us his parents, I told you. I said he's 5 years old. He'll say something and he'll look at me. Do you understand? And I catch myself like, yeah, I think I do say that quite a bit. So seeing that in him helps me to kind of catch myself when I am teaching him. I don't want to say disciplining him, because I'm trying to teach him, because when he does things that he shouldn't do, one of the things that I always try to do is I go down to his level, right? I don't want to stand over him. I don't want to be this domineering tower of authority. He knows I'm his dad. He knows that I'm the boss here in the house. But how Jared talked about developing the relationship, this is something that I really try hard to do. When he does something wrong or when he's pushing back, I go down to his level, I take a knee, or I sit on the couch, I have him sit next to me, and I let him know. What's difficult is I could almost see it, and not he's just looking past me. But I make that effort, and I don't push it. And um he's he's a kid, he's got lots of emotions. He's a little more emotional than my daughter, and he goes off the deep end real easy. So every time that happens, I never want to belittle his emotions or what he's feeling. And I let him know, okay, you can feel sad, you can be upset, but and I try to, whatever the situation is, try to explain it to him. So out of my two children, he's the one, that is teaching my wife and I what it means to be a parent in a way, because of just his character and personality. And I find that the challenge of my job is because the qualities that he has, I find to be great qualities for an individual, for a person, because I could see him growing up and not being a yes man or a pushover, just the way he is now. But my job is to try to teach him that there are certain times and certain places he has to follow the rules, or he has to listen to whoever's the authority figure around. And I don't want him to grow up to be a bully, because I see him when we go to a park, he climbs to the top of the playground and he's not letting other kids go down the slide, even kids bigger than him. And it's funny. So what do? I call him over, I sit him down, I let him know that he can't do that, and he throws a little fit. I tell him, I understand you're upset, but sit here. I put a timer on my phone. I said, look, you're going to sit here for 5 minutes and watch the other kids play and look how they take turns. So it's these little things like that I'm trying to implement, where I don't have to be aggressive. I don't have to spank him. I did before a lot of this, and even throughout this year, I catch myself doing what, like Jared talked about, grabbing him by the arm, pulling him over, squeezing him, being too forceful. And so I've gotten away from the spanking, and I'm trying now to totally get away from that and be more of the communicating with him. And so now that you guys understand what we've been going through with, this move, people who are watching don't understand, but my family has gone through a huge transition. And so the biggest challenge I have had as a father, my wife and I as parents, has been to try to maintain a sense of stability and routine for my kids. And I believe we have been successful in that because my kids have done well. And, I'm happy to say during this transition was tough because my kids, they wanted more mommy than me, which I understand because I was dealing with a lot, solving lots of problems. But the fact that now we have settled into our home now, we're in our permanent location, that I feel like I've got my kids back. So my daughter, she wants to be with me. She wants me to help her brush her teeth at night, not mommy, which was mommy for the longest time. And I'm putting her to bed and my son, reading them stories. They want daddy, which feels good. And so just to wrap up what I'm talking about, what's important, how I see for me to be a better father, and how I started talking about this, what you were talking about, Anthony, is for me to be a better man. So the way I'm able to do that is I wake up very early in the morning and I take care of myself first. I'm an early riser. I think like Jerry, I'm up 4:30 in the morning, and I get up, I do a little bit of exercises, I read, and I make sure that I'm taken care of, that my head, that my body, my spirit, my mind, I'm on the right track. I'm on the right page, because when my kids get up and when my wife gets up, I want to make sure that I'm balanced, because if I'm not, I find it harder to maintain my cool throughout the day. Or when my son's throwing pushback throughout the day, my temperament is not so bad, right? Anyways, but that's
Ben,
it.
That's excellent to hear, Mr.
I
Finn.
made it as long as I could go, man.
I swear I wasn't talking that much.
I was like gonna
man.
pop.
Anyways,
Dude,
but yeah,
it is
that's
apparent that your son is good at helping you be a better parent, man, because of the fact that I've seen the transition. I've seen the stuff you've gone through and how you balanced it. It has been a hell of a trip, but you guys are going strong. I did want to highlight one thing before we pass it, and that is building better fathers again, dropping knowledge as he does. He said, without belittling the emotions, the struggles of the kids themselves. He's referring to what he was saying that a lot of dads say, like walk it off, like it's not that big of a deal. You said, you help your child deal with their emotions, but you let them understand it's okay that you failed. It's okay to be sad. It's okay that you feel that. But here's how you properly channel it, and here's how you bring that and go forward. And that is a much better tactic. It's okay that you're sad. It's okay that you're mad. Don't try to hide that. Feel that, flesh it out, and then move forward with it. And I think that's a great angle that you're taking, and it's showing through the results that you're getting through your family. So very well done on that front. For anybody who doesn't know, make sure you're following Mr. Finn. His channel is loaded with content, especially if you're learning how to master the English language, as he is crushing on that front. Mr. Finn, before we do pass it to Lance, though, I did want to ask you, is your channel up and running? Are you back to producing content?
Yeah, it's up and running. I posted up a tongue twister yesterday. I didn't share in our content creators yet, and I do have a video I'm going to post today. Now that I'm settled and I'm back, I'm going to start creating more content again. But I have to deal with my schedule. Looks like work's going to be popping up, so we'll talk about that backstage. But yes, content is coming back online. So thanks.
Nice.
Very cool.
Before we jump to Lance, I just want to point out one good point that Finn talked about. When he kept saying teach, right? I'm disciplining, I'm teaching my son. And we have to remember, as fathers, it is our job to teach our kids. And when that goes wrong, right, when our kids don't listen to our teachings, it's not their fault, right? It's not their problem, it's ours. We have to be better teachers. And if we fail at teaching, that's okay also, right? We can make mistakes as men, but a lot of times the pressure gets applied on the kid, and we never look at ourselves to be better teachers. So I just wanted to point that out. And Blanche, you're up, brother.
Really quick. On that note of teaching, I
Oh,
won't be
this
long.
is your
I
fault,
won't be
Anthony.
long.
This is Anthony's fault,
I won't be
100%.
long. But listen, on that note of teaching, I have experience in the classroom teaching kids. I have seen kids that do well, they have parents involved, whereas kids who don't do well, the parents are not even there. And I have been a strong believer from the beginning that education begins at home. Okay, so those of us who are fathers, we have to take that role. It begins at home, and don't No, don't hand that over. Don't neglect that. Don't give the responsibility of teaching morals and ethics and all this stuff to the teachers at the schools. Their job is math, history, science, geography, things like that. But to be good humans, that's our job. And I'll leave it at that.
There was a question in the chat. So Lance, feel free to jump on it. If you want to hit the question, go ahead. If not, once you're done, breaking down how you've changed, how you've evolved, how it's improved your family since you've been more intentional. But basically, Bill is asking, did any of you men, when you made the choice to change, have you had to deal with a spouse who is still in the older ways, the yelling, maybe the spanking, the screaming? This isn't to bring the spouse through the carpet or even the ex, to hold them in front of everybody and drag them through the mud. That's not what this is. But if you had to deal with it, what tactics did you use? How did you find a way to come to it? Are you still going through it? So that's something for everybody to think about. Lance, if you went through this, feel free to answer directly. But if not, we'll hit this right after you.
So, yeah, I haven't really had to deal with that directly. I am divorced, and so the parenting styles that I've taken on is very different from their mother. And we live in separate houses. And so, I chose to change my parenting style. I was raised in an authoritarian home. And I realized, later on that this wasn't the way, this wasn't working, that I needed to find a way to connect with the kids. And so, I made that choice. She'll have to kind of make that on her own down the line. I've discussed it with her to a degree here and there that, there are ways to parent differently than the way we were parenting when we were together. But that, ultimately that's going to have to be her decision. I made the decision. I just felt like I wasn't really going to leave a legacy with my children if I continued to parent the way that I was parented. That really, the way I was parented left me with a lot of issues. And I knew that if I could do it for my kids, that I would, obviously make them better parents someday when they're, raising my grandchildren. So, the result has been that the connection with my children has gotten much better. So my kids will speak freely to me. They will tell me when there's things on their mind, when they're having problems, when they need help with something. Those are the kind of things that I'm starting to see as our relationship grows. Before they may have not told me the truth. They may have lied to me. And now they understand that they can come to dad. Hey, dad, I did this. Okay, well, I'm not happy about it, but let's figure out how to fix it. So we're coming at things from a different perspective. We're solving problems versus creating problems because we're not handling them properly. We're solving these problems. We're attacking it. And the end result has just been the connection with the kids, that a closeness that we're still working on it. It's not perfect. We still get pissed off at each other, but at the same time, we also know how to handle each other. And as our relationship grows, I think in the long term, I hope to have a better connection with my children than I do with my parents. And that is my goal. As I'm looking long term down the road, 15, 20 years from now. I'm not necessarily looking at tomorrow because, we're still working. We're still growing. But 15 years from now, I want to have a relationship with my children. I want to have them call me and say, hey, Dad, what do you think I should do about X, Y, Z? And value my input.
Yeah, man. I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you did answer Bill's question, right, about a yelling and screaming spouse. You said it in when you were explaining what happened in your home, Lance, right? There's times where you guys have conflict or arguments or disagreements, but you think about how you handle it in a better way, right? It's the same thing. It's emotional regulation. So if your wife or your spouse is yelling, screaming at the kids and you want it to stop, it's being aware of that and letting her know that she needs to be aware of, we don't treat people like this, right? This is not how we talk to anybody, especially not our kids, right? She wouldn't want, if your wife is screaming at the kids, you can explain to her, you wouldn't want me to scream and yell at you, So this is something we need to work on. This is something that we see there's a problem and we have to correct it. And that's the cooperation. And it's the same thing with your kids, right? Once you do that with your kids and you say, hey, dad's not going to yell and scream anymore, they understand. So next time they're emotionally unregulated, they start to put the pieces together, right? I don't have to yell and scream at dad. I can talk to him calmly like he talks to me. So it's definitely a self-fulfilling prophecy. We practice what we preach. It shows up in the real world.
Anthony, I just wanted to add quickly to that. And it's, I found that, and Lance, you kind of said this too, and really important when you're dealing with a divorce is stability and consistency. That's what really, consistently not blowing up, consistently keeping the tone mellow when things are a little chaotic, and just keeping a consistent, smooth running as best you can, I think helps, especially when you're dealing with divorce.
I wish I had something to drop on that, but Anthony stole it. The way you said that, yeah, we still get pissed off, but we come back to, dude, that's exactly how you handle it with your lady. So to Bill, asking the question, that's the answer. You just talk to her, you just handle it. You just connect. You're like, hey, we're doing things differently now. It doesn't need to be a coming to Christ moment. It doesn't need to be this grand event. It's nothing more than, oh, hey, we're not doing that anymore. Relax. I got him. Go take a breather. Eventually she'll get to the point where she can take the breather and you don't have to step in. Jerry.
All right, Zac, Anthony, first of all, thank you for having me on with this group of guys. You guys know this. I had a great father. I had a great example. And he passed away February 15th, 2021. So not too long ago, coming up on a year. And so being around you guys, I pick up a lot of things. Most of them are good. But three words that really stick with me when I think about parenting with my son. So I have one son, 18 years old. Those three words are example, presence, and engagement. It's interesting that those three words stand out, and I've heard those from Zac and Anthony and other men within FoE, and they really resonated with me. And I think back and I think, my dad did this well. So I had a good example. And for me, I was living a life that I felt like, hey, I wasn't the example. I wasn't who I wanted him to be, who I wanted my son to be. And so, really zeroed in with you guys and have been working on becoming that example. That's something that I know Anthony and I have had a lot of discussions and talks, and that has been foundational for me in my parenting is, number one, be the example of the man that you want him to be. And part of that is self-control. I think Charles mentioned it earlier about responding versus reacting. And that has been big, is that example of responding versus reacting. The presence and the engagement piece has been interesting because the things that we're talking about, it requires work. And part of the work with my son was just trying to understand how can I engage with him? And what I've discovered with my son is he's 18 years old. So, when I come home from work, he's home from school, and I'm talking to my son just kind of in the day-to-day, a lot of the answers I get from him are yes, no, maybe. And so I don't get much. But what I've discovered is that with him, I need to do things with him. When I'm doing things with him, we really engage at a deep level. We've had some of the greatest conversations while we're backpacking in the Rocky Mountains. That's an adventure that we do every year, every summer. We're going to a mountain someplace, taking a week, just the two of us and backpacking. And we have some deep conversations because there is nothing else but just us in the wild. And so those adventures that's how the presence and the engagement. We started doing Krav Maga together. So we go and we train together. And again, the ride there, the laughs we get when he accidentally slips off the bag and punches me in the nose, and all those kinds of things, they build this relationship, this connection with my son. And the working out, before we did this thing, I worked out in the morning, got my workout in, got home, and he's like, "We gonna do the workout?" I said, "Yeah." So he came out, and I just kind of helped him and just hung out with him while he was working out. And I was like, "Hey, you got to do this next." And he would do it. And we play music together and things like that. So those things have helped me a lot. They've really, this whole idea of connection with your children has been big for me. But those 3 words have been foundational: example, presence, engagement. And that's where my wins have come from, is trying to stay zeroed in on those 3 things.
Jerry, what's interesting about that is Lance was talking about looking at tomorrow, but also looking down the road. So he's looking at where we're going, but also the next step, making sure he gets that right. And it's the same thing as you're looking up at your father and you're looking down at your son. It's that same divide. It's you're honoring the past by crafting the future. It's just a beautiful thing to see it playing out. And honestly, because you're a content creator, you do so, you're more open. I mean, obviously, just the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, you understand how to tie the words together properly. It's still not easy when it's something so close to home. And yet you're doing it and you're sharing it. And that's one of the most difficult yet impressive aspects as to what it is you're doing, is because I know how hard it is to do it. And not just to speak on it here, but also to write on it, to share the story. You've been doing it the whole way. So any father out there that's like, well, the news is garbage and all this stuff sucks, you're looking in the wrong areas. You have men writing about the content that you want to see and you want to live, you want to embody. It's literally there on the internet for you. Just click the button. So as I said within, the same thing with Jerry. He's a creator. Follow, go check it out. Men of Grit. It's more than just espousing these values. You have to embody it. And you literally, I see you getting after it out in the woods, looking at bears and stuff and doing that and kicking each other's asses for fun. And it's just a great father-son dynamic to see. I love seeing that play out, and the way you honor your father by being a present father for your son. It's just one of the great moments of my day to see that every single morning, to see that play out inside FoE. It's a cool thing, man. So I appreciate you giving us that gift.
Yeah, you bet, Zach. And I appreciate you saying and drawing in that focus, because he is the fire, man. He's the fire of that helps me. And I want to be a better man. I want to be a better father. He gives me that fire, and his pictures are right here on the wall every day I'm in here, so it's good stuff.
Yeah,
Hey, Jerry.
I have to give Jerry a little bit of credit, because I did learn a valuable lesson from talking to him on fatherhood. He probably doesn't even know it. So when he first joined FoE, I'm sure you guys all know that he's a maniac. He doesn't stop. He just keeps going, right?
It's a fact.
It's
The Energizer Bunny.
Yeah. And he's in this process, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm crushing life. I'm killing it. I'm going at it." And he's like, "But I have this problem with my son." And talking with him, understanding what's going on, right? He was always determined to go a certain way, and then he stopped. And I don't mean he stopped growing. He just stopped himself and he thought about what was going on. And he said, "You know what? This is my path. My kid's going that way, and I'm going to go with them." And that was an important lesson I learned from you, Jerry, because my son's a little bit younger, and I know that I'm going to be going through that, and I already am. And it's almost like putting your ego down and not always having the right path, right? Letting your kid go and choose his own path. So it was cool to see, and I appreciate the lesson.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I remember, I forgot about the discussion, but I remember it now. Yeah. Good stuff.
I'm glad it impacted you.
You
as
made a
much as
mark.
me.
Good stuff.
Marcel is about to jump on the previous question, but before we answer that, Jerry, Building Better Father says it was engagement, presence, and what was the third one? Example?
Example, presence, engagement.
Got it. There we go. All right,
Hey.
so back to Bill's question.
Yeah. So Bill, I mean, so Bill asked a question about, how to deal with a spouse that's still yelling and screaming. And I had a lot of that. And in fairness, it was also me on the front of it. So we both did it for a while, and then I backed off, and I kind of found a new path of how I'm going to interface and handle my kids. And so she was still doing that. But Jerry, what you pointed to, going to the like Krav Maga with your son, and you said the word, I think it should almost be a fourth word, but it really is important. It's connection, right? And connection in the sense that they want to make, of all the things they could be doing in their life, they want to make that time spent with you. And so to Bill's, Bill, I'll throw out to you one quick thing that's often it takes a lot of work and it's a long road with a lot of things we do, but it was one quick immediate hack that actually worked extremely well. And it's probably one of my best wins. Is I felt that when I would step out of it and I would just watch my wife screaming at, let's say my daughter, and then my daughter screamed back at her, it kind of hit me like a light bulb. It's almost as if both of them felt they have nothing to lose. They're both in a moment. It's total chaos. They don't care. They're going to say whatever they want to say, and they have nothing to lose. So it kind of dawned on me. It was my wife's birthday that coming weekend. And I kind of figured, I was like, we've got to do a strong correction. And so instead of going on the birthday with her and leaving all the kids behind, I wanted to make it so that those two girls had something to lose if they got into that vicious arguing match or screaming at each other again. So I set them for the whole week, and it was 2 nights. I set up, like a hotel for them to stay at, a dinner. They went to a nice little show. All these small things that I knew really reflected the interests of both of them. And I just stepped out. And I'm not going to exaggerate. That was, to this day, I still see that they have a secret small relationship that grew out of 48 hours. And both of them feel that it's too much to lose. So that connection matters. The stuff you're doing, Jerry, that one-to-one time, it gives you kind of some armor for some down days when things aren't going well. And then when you actually hit that wall and you're about to get aggressive, or maybe my wife is about to scream, she's going to look at her daughter and she's going to say, I have something to lose and I don't want to. And that was 48 hours. So Bill, try it out. Give it a shot.
That's solid, man.
Yeah, don't be cheap, Bill.
I remember that, and I thought, man, how clever is that? And that's the beauty of what we got here, is that we get to see these things, and you do something like that, and you impact like 10 guys, because they see the example and what that did for you. Yeah, that was really cool to watch. It's good stuff.
Eric, you're up, and I see you yawning, man, and I know it's been an hour. The floor is yours. I told you to stretch this.
It's these 4 a.m. mornings. There's like a theme as I look around this Brady Bunch. I've got Jerry in my head telling me to wake up. Charles telling me stop being so offensive towards my family.
Even his PRs, though, something's working.
Anthony's telling me it's not my kid's job to respect me. And Zach's telling me it's my fault. So it's like between all of these.
That's not what we do here.
Between all these themes. No, I love it. And I think that's what's funny is this is a really, I don't know if this is a sick thing to say, but I almost envy the guys who had a major problem. And once they fixed that problem, everything started snapping into place. I come from a background of complacency, and it's a really different perspective I've started to notice in the group. And so like I've got the challenges, as you mentioned, forming connection with my kids, forming connection with my wife. Like we've kind of been so obsessed with trying to resolve issues with our kids. You can't just force that stuff. It has to come naturally. And so I really am one of the newer guys in this group. I'm at the bottom of the mountain. A lot of these guys I would say are at the top of the mountain. Could be 2 years in, 3 years in. I'm about 4 months in. But what I've noticed is that it's okay to screw up, but it's a matter of owning it. It's a matter of getting some action items out of each thing you do. And it's really true that once you start asking the opinions of all these very experienced men in this group, you get some solid advice. You got to use your own brain, whether that advice applies to your family or not, because everyone's a little bit different. So some of the wins that I've gotten with my kids, really being able to pause and think about what they're saying, those bids for attention. It's not that I need to be interested in what they're talking about. It's that they're asking for a moment to connect with me, and being able to see that. If something wasn't an interest of mine, I'd be a dick about it, and I'd just say, whatever. I'm not interested. Or I'd go back doing my thing. Yeah, grunt. That's nice. Same with my wife. I'm trying to really, really see these things. And again, being present in the moment, pausing and really thinking about it. Why am I so good at these things on a business end and I'm so bad at these things on a family end? Why is that transaction so simple over here and yet I fail so miserably over here? And that's what this is. This is making connections. Go rewire your brain after you turn 40. It's not easy. It's a process. And for better or for worse, I mean, I'll have days where it's like the greatest joy happens and the most miserable down happens, and it all just kind of gets mushed into the same day. But, with this group, it's almost like there's a guy for everything. I don't feel afraid. I have no shame in asking the dumbest questions, and I get, some decent responses most of the time. But it's funny. I'll get DMs from people saying, I didn't want to ask that question. I'm glad you asked that question. And back to the kids, spending those 10 minutes, I think that was my first impression I saw when I joined the group, was I saw them doing a little 10-minute challenge. Just go spend 10 minutes with each kid each day. It really didn't matter what you were doing. And I'm thinking, man, that is so simple. And I'm trying to think back of when's the last time I just spent 10 minutes with any one of my family members doing nothing, with no overhead, no preconceived notion as to what those, what it was meant to do. It wasn't about cleaning the room. It wasn't about getting this done. It wasn't about scheduling an event. And so this doesn't need to be difficult. And I think that's my biggest takeaways. It's changing, it's evolving, and it's not giving up. So we're working on our values this month, and some of mine are, a big one is resilience. And if you get knocked down and you have resilience, you get back up and you try again. You get knocked down again, you get back up again. So it's really that process. And that's been my journey so far. I swear I've got a solid year left, but I do see these little rays of hope. I see these little connections forming, nowhere near where I want them to be. But if nothing else, I can own my problems. Maybe I can't stop myself from doing the things just yet, but I'm really trying to reflect, and I'm really trying to take in and absorb as many opinions as possible.
So who's going to be the one to tell them that those rays of hope is actually just getting to the starting point? That's not the finish line you're looking at there, man. That's to get to square one.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild how much work it is to get to the starting line. When I joined this, I didn't know how many problems I had. Thanks, guys. It's just.
Yeah, but
I was
Eric,
talking to
since
Anthony.
when you joined, your mindset has completely changed, right?
You're smart enough to see so much more.
It's the most frustrating thing to see yourself actively doing the wrong thing and not being able to control your physical body yet. But I get it. That's part of the process. Not being able to control the reaction. I wear my mood on my face. I do talk in tones that are condescending. I'm sarcastic. I got all these things going on that I cannot seem. My entire life I've been this way, and it's hard to, it's hard to be happy when you're not happy. It's hard to just fake being something that you're not. And so, that's my challenge. That's what I'm really working on. And I think that once I can just relax and once I can be in the moment, that's where that connection is going to come from. Everybody's going to feel heard. Everyone's going to feel understood. And yeah, good point. It really is the starting point.
Eric, but as I do, man, those little wins, when you see that old version, it's what I said before on some of our calls. When you see that old version of yourself kind of run past and you just sort of pause and you're like, I know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you handle it the right way and your little daughter's smiling and she comes and gives you a hug or whatever it might be like that. I mean, those are gold and they happen. And when they do, I mean, you gotta recognize, hey, we've actually made some progress, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when you stop trying to control everything else outside and you start focusing inward. That's when things change.
Absolutely.
It's wild when you look at it. It's growth, man. There's many different ways to say the same thing. The mountains, the peaks, the fact, like we all say it, we're all men. We've all been there and spoken about it. But I think there comes a point where you realize there's just now. And then that's like, I have today to do the best I can do today. And if win or lose, I've got tomorrow and I start over. The stuff I did then, it can all go to shit tomorrow. So I got to just focus on right now. I'm not worried about the peak. I'm not worried about the summit. I'm just enjoying each step as I go.
Mm-hmm.
And before we got on this call, I was talking to Anthony. I was like, man, I was going through some shit today. Just trying to lock some things in with the family. And I was like, man, like sometimes you got it all locked in, everything's moving. And then it's just like, poof, you hit a mine. Like, who put that there? Like, how did that just happen? I'm looking at all these things. I'm literally running a panel tonight on fatherhood. How did I miss that? And then you got to deal with it. You just patch it up, man. You get the water out and you get your little pump and you hand pump it all out. Easy day. And you go back in the grind. So there is no time frame. There's no making it. And for anybody watching this, there's no end to this. And nor should you want there to be one. That's fatherhood. You literally have a lifelong commitment without having a test run if you even like it. You just take it on and you roll with it for the rest of your life, trying to get better as you go. And if you're watching this, obviously that's what you're doing. So why not stop just listening to things like this and start applying it? Nothing should stop any father at all from being, hey, hop on this YouTube thing. We're going to talk about fatherhood. Without reservation of anything, like, oh, I can totally talk about my kids and how I parent them. It should be a normal thing. They're like, oh, no, we don't talk about it. I just hit him, right? Ball and chain. Man, shut the fuck up. There goes our monetization.
Whoa.
Now, we did not save the best for last. We saved the very best for last. Colton is a team leader inside the Fraternity of Excellence, a father, a brother, a man who has helped me significantly multiple times, many late nights with his men, stressful calls, great calls. Colton is a solid dude, veteran, champ, bearded brother. Colton, close this thing out, man. How have things changed with you and the family since you decided to be intentional as a father?
Immensely, really. And it actually goes a little bit beyond that. And my demeanor and how I act within my relationship, at work, people I meet. Some background around that is I've always been a rather blunt person. I have the veteran background, and the way you handle stuff as an NCO, it's all about action and getting there quickly. And that's kind of the take I took on my family initially. When things were good, they were good, very active with them, reading, spending lots of time with them. The struggles and the big changes I have were from when stuff wasn't going so good. Kids are energetic, maybe they misbehave, they want extra attention, and you're doing something. The way I would handle that wasn't, my response to that and frustration and wanting stuff to go smoothly just made things worse. In their younger years, I did spank them in misbehaving times, or, that's how I was raised. And through time and hearing guys here, I learned, like we've talked about here, there is a better way. And all of it pointed back to me. Like Anthony said, we're growing to be better men, and that's really what it came back to. I think it was Mr. Finn noted that your kids become a mirror of yourself. So, and a lot of those actions I took, raising my voice, being blunt, very verbal with reactions, I could see it coming out of my kids, especially as my boys got older. I have twin boys, they're 16. I have 2 daughters. And as soon as I saw some of that and their reaction, my reaction to them was in correcting that, but they learned it from me. How can I go about, telling them not to act this way when they learn that behavior from me? So that's what put in the reps and the work and change, trying to build on reps, how I react, how I handle things when they're going good, when they're, more importantly for me, when they're going bad. It makes me intentional for the good stuff, but the communication is probably my major tool for when things were going in a negative way. Connecting the dots for them, getting down to their level, speaking clearly, explaining, providing an opinion, whatever the matter is, so that they can understand, not just because dad said so or he yelled at me in this way, I shouldn't do that again, now I'm scared. Is so that they understood the exact, take and why
behind that. That's how they can evolve and move forward and not repeat things, or learn to act in certain ways that maybe we think is appropriate, or whatever the case may be. Just simply being blunt with words and yelling and those things that only I could see it in their eyes, that only taught them more so fear. Don't do the wrong thing. They're walking on eggshells basically, and that's not the type of relationship that I want at all. It's the only thing I knew. So the work there is learning how to communicate, learning how to control yourself, learning how to react, and not pop off at this dumb little stuff. I've had a lot of those tough conversations now. I've like some guys here, I've had regret over some of the ways I've acted, and at the time, I just saw that as more parenting. I think Marcel was talking about hovering versus being more of the authoritarian type of a parent, and the way forward is doing the right things and building those connections in the relationship moving forward. And you start to see it evolve. You keep doing the thing, you see it evolve. It's the same answer for me when it comes to the spouse. She got a lot of that from me too. So seeing the change, the new way you handle things, like we're the leaders in the home. That's what spreads, and that's how it happens. It's not overnight. It takes time. You have to put in the work for it, and it's worth it. The relationship we have keeps on growing better. My youngest daughter, she's 9. I might have. She's a very sensitive, emotional, high energy girl, and though the reaction I gave her, like some people will say, I just get a little tap on the ass or whatever. Well, for her, that's just as equivalent as me fully winding up for her, because she experiences it a little differently. The actions still happen, and I can't even remember the last time she's 9. It's maybe 3 or 4. I can't really recall, I was working on her, talking about, trying to get her to tell the truth more when stuff happened. She was still scared, that many years later, that something could possibly happen like that. And we finally, after working on that communication, she let it out that she was afraid that she was going to get spanked again. And I was blown away. I was super thrilled that she shared that with me. But I reassured her then and there, it was covered in the call. It's never gonna happen for me ever again, and it shouldn't happen from anybody else either. I got your back, and you have my word. So that's how I move forward from that one. I can't take back the past, but I can set the tone going forward.
Well said, Colton.
Told you, man. Very best for last. Yeah, deliver it. It's the authenticity, man. It's the rawness of it, and that's what I really enjoyed about this, Anthony. And it's the fact that, when you were talking about it, you put it together and just bringing this thing to fruition, I was like, this is really cool, dude. To have this many people on with this different perspectives, yet very overlap along a lot of parts of the story. People need to see this. This is the, and now I'm talking like we're inside FoE and they can't watch us right now as we're talking about it. But dude, as you go, these are the discussions. These are the talks that this is totally normal. To share something like that, Colton, there are men who are like, no way. They couldn't even handle it. They don't have the strength to do it. But those same dudes, they'll hop on and watch the motivational videos, models, Lambos, do all that, crush it, get it, make money, live well, crypto, rah. They'll do all those things, but they won't watch a video and then apply what they learn about being a good father. Literal life sentence. The greatest role you'll ever play in the life of another human being, and it's not worth the time for you to invest in improving at it. That's bullshit. That's bullshit in the greatest form. We say we're strong men. If you're strong enough, if you're the leader that you say you are, you're the king, you're the protector, the thing goes bump in the night, you're the one that answers the door, then you should be the one who's strong enough to face the things that make you a little sad and scared. The things inside you you're afraid to face. Am I a good dad? Am I doing my best with these children? Am I raising them to the best standard I could raise them to? Are they going to become like me? And is that something I even want? Those aren't easy questions to answer, but every single man here has that answer because they've already faced it. It's hard as shit. And you're alone when you do it. You can talk to these men, you can ask questions, but you are alone when you're looking in the mirror saying, am I going to give these kids my best? Am I going to do better than I did yesterday? Am I going to do better than how I was brought up? Am I going to start a new legacy? Those are questions every man should be asking themselves.
Yeah, man. I just want to let everybody know too, this is very similar to what we do inside of FoE, but we usually have cigars and there's a lot more jokes. we make fun of each other a lot more also. So, but this is cool, man. This is real life. This is as real as it gets, right? We got these men on here sharing their stories, sharing what has worked and how they've improved their family. And I don't think there's too much that needs to be said beyond that, man. That's what is the most important. So I appreciate you guys all coming on here tonight. What else we got, Zach?
I was about to end it, man.
Boom.
Listen, obviously, if you like, just subscribe. We're not even going to drop that. Let that slide. You know what to do. Listen, we're fathers. This is normal. I want to see this more normalized, though. I want to see more men doing this. I want to see this conversation continue to grow. We'll have these men back on. We'll get them whenever they're free. I mean, you obviously heard the intel, the knowledge that they're dropping. The perspective, though, the normalization of this, you have the entire world trying to normalize a lot of evil things, a lot of dark things. We're trying to fight that. The only way to fight that is with action, is by taking the stands, by putting your face on. These men put their face, their names on the line. They gave us their time. They gave us the most precious asset they have, time away from their family, to us tonight. That is not lost in Anthony and I for a second. And I meant that in the literal and, pun intended, the second that they gave us. It's important because it matters. And look, if you're going to sit there and talk about wanting the world to be better, be better. The world's dark, brighten the light in your home. Well, things are crazy, then bring order. Bring order within your soul. Fix yourself. Face all those things that you have going on. Sit down with your kids. Make them a part of it. They're not the ball and chain. That's your inspiration. That's your fuel. Those lives are looking up to you. And every single man said it their own way. They're watching everything. So put on a great fucking show. Show them what they can do in their life. Show them how far they can go. Show them how they can change their ways. Show them how when they fall down, they can get back up. Show them that life is a great thing to live and something they should be looking forward to every single day. Show them that by living that. Embody your values. Don't espouse them.